Okay, so this is going to be my first Photoshop tutorial, specifically dealing with layers and how to use layers to put a texture onto a photograph. On the left hand side here is a photograph I took recently. On the right hand side is a texture that's available to download. If you search Google for free Photoshop textures, there's plenty of websites turn up which give you links to download free texture files, and this one's a very grungy looking one. So the first thing I want to do is to use my rectangular selection tool there, make sure that it's got no feather on it at all. If I drag that, you can see it's going to bring the feather in up and down, so I want that on 0, and I use that just to select all of that there. If I go to edit, copy, that bit is now in the clipboard. Go to this, make that full screen, and the first thing I want to do is to create an empty layer. And you can see in the layers panel here, which is this section here, all of that, you can see that it's got my background picture and then the empty layer above that. So I make sure that the empty layer is selected, go to edit and paste. So now I've got the texture file pasted right over the top of my photograph. It hasn't altered the photograph underneath it. If I click the eye, you can see that it turns the visibility of that layer on and off. Very easy. Okay, so to put that texture over the top of the photograph, I highlight the texture and I use this drop down box here. This is the blend mode drop down box. You can see if I mouse over there, it says set the blending mode for the layer. Normal represents the texture file as it is normally. The one I'm interested in using is down here, and it's either going to be overlay, soft light or hard light, which are the ones I want to use. So to start with, I'm going to go to overlay. There we can see that it's showing through the photograph from underneath. So adding a layer over the top is a bit like putting a bit of tracing paper over the top of your photograph, but you can change some settings to do with the blending mode and the opacity and such like, to see what the properties of that tracing paper layer are, how see-through it is, for example. If I choose soft light, you can see that that lowers the effect down a little bit. Hard light makes it really quite pronounced. So I think for the moment I'm going to go with soft light. And now it looks as though we've got some paint splatters on the ground and on the wall, but in places it is a bit too harsh, and in some places I might not want it at all. This area, for example, is supposed to be in complete shadow. So to bring that effect down, I could change the opacity here. I can either do that by using the slider up and down, or if I put my cursor over the word opacity there, I can click and drag and that pulls that down, and that's quite useful for fine tuning the effect that you want. So I think for this one I'm just going to put it on 50% opacity. There you go, you can see that we've got a few light splatters on the ground and such like now. But there are some places where I don't want it applied, such as on the model herself, all her body and legs there, and on the ground here. That bit I don't think we should be able to see any detail there because it's in shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mask on this layer and paint over the mask in black, and putting black on a mask on a layer stops that effect showing. So this button here is an add layer mask. So make sure that my texture is selected, hit add layer mask, and I get a completely white mask. what I then want to do is to grab my paintbrush. I've got quite a large brush there at the minute, probably going to be too large. I think I'll drag that down a little bit. See how big? Yeah, that'll probably do it just for the purposes of this. And I want to make sure that black is selected as my foreground colour, which it is. Okay, so on this mask now, I'm just going to paint over the bits that I don't want the texture applied to. So there we go, you can see that's starting to disappear there. Now we're starting to come out of the shadow area here, so I'm going to go to the controls for my brush and bring that opacity down to about 50%. When I paint 50% onto the mask, it's not going to appear as black, it's going to appear as mid-grey. So that still allows some of the texture to show through. That's the way masks work. Complete white lets everything show through. Complete black prevents anything showing through at all. Anything in between, dark grey to light grey, is sort of like an in-betweeny kind of setting. The closer towards black you are, the more you're blanking out the effect. The closer towards white you are, the more you're letting the effect show through. So I'm going to go over that again just a little bit. That's about right there. Okay, so now I want to do the same thing for our body. So I'm going to bring that back up to 100. I'm going to change my brush size down to a little bit smaller than that. That's about the size of her head, that should do. And I'm just going to paint over her body there, just to get rid of the texture effect which was showing up. There we go, just down her leg. There we go, and just a little bit on her head there, on her hair, and that's about it. So, you can see the mask there. You can see the bits I've painted in, complete black for that shadow area, a little bit of grey for when we're coming out of the shadows, and complete black all over our body. So those bits there aren't allowing the texture to show through. So, quick before and after, just click this visibility button. That's the before, that's the after. And that's just a very quick way of how to put a texture onto an image.